Okay, hello again. This video is a review for exam 1. This is for CMPS 1023, the digital culture. So we're going to take exam 1 this Thursday. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I do have this topic list pulled up. This topic list is in D2L in week 5. So we're taking exam 1 week 5, and you can find it in the folder there. A lot of the stuff that you'll see on the quiz or on the test will be similar to things that you saw on the previous quizzes. So I would recommend going back and looking at the old quizzes. I did open all of them up that we have taken so far. And I posted them with the questions, the correct answers, and what you answered. So you should be able to go through and see the questions with the correct answers. Please let me know if you are not able to see that. And that way you could use those previous quizzes to go back and kind of study and get an idea for the types of questions that might be asked. You will have 5 questions on exam 1 over number-based conversions. So I could give you the information in one number base and expect you to convert it to a different one. A lot of those will be multiple choice questions, just like they were on the 2 quizzes that we took over number-based conversions. This says without a calculator. I am okay with you using a handheld calculator. You just need to be really careful that it is obvious that you have a calculator and not your cell phone out, because you're not allowed to have your cell phone out, looking up things during the exam, but you can use a calculator to help you with the math. I'm okay with that. And when you're taking the test, remember that the lockdown browser is required and a webcam has to be turned on. So it might give you some warnings, if you have your calculator out, but that's fine. That's okay, because what that will do is it'll just flag it and it'll tell me that I need to go watch the video. But if I, watch the video and can see that you just have a calculator to do your math, that's okay. I'm okay with you using a calculator for math. That's fine. So you could go back and watch the number-based conversion video to help study for that, or you could go back and take a look at those quizzes to help make sure that you are prepared for it. And if you would like some more practice questions, then you could come into my office hours. I would be happy to go through some practice questions for number-based conversions. There will be 5 questions over the history of computing. That was from week 2. We covered that in week 2 this semester. There were 2 videos that you watched over it. You took a quiz over the history of computing, and there was also some handouts that you had for the quiz. So definitely go back and take a look at those handouts. You're going to want to know who these people are. You're going to want to know what they are famous for, what they did. Kind of know who created what. You don't have to memorize dates or anything like that. But if I say, if I ask you, who did blah, 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 you should be able to tell me which of these people did that. So 5 questions over the history of computing. They will be multiple choice. Okay. The majority of the exam is over Python, and you will need to be able to read Python code and write Python code. And that's what I'm going to spend most of my time kind of going through and practicing in this video. We're going to be talking about code. Okay. So what do I mean by write Python code? There will be a few questions where it's just a text box. It will say, write Python statements that could blah, 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 blah. And then it's just a blank text box, and you have to just type the programming statements into that text box. You won't have replit, things won't be color coded. None of it will pop up there for you. You don't have your outside references like you would normally have when you're writing your programs. So you want to make sure that you feel comfortable being able to write some commands yourself. They will be simple. It will definitely be things that we have seen before, but I want you to be aware that you should be able to like write some of the commands out on your own, right? So for example, you should be able to get user input. Like that's important. We have done it for program 1 and program 2. There were questions similar to that on the Python quiz 1. So you've definitely seen it before. We've definitely covered it. That will be on the test. You should know how to create variables. You have this right here. We have that assignment statement that will allow us to take a value and put it in a variable. You'll want to make sure you can do that. You should know how print works. So we have the command print, literally just the word print, and we have parentheses. And then whatever you want to print out, you put inside quotation marks if you want it to print the literal text. Or you can use the variable name if you want it to print what is inside the variable. So you should know how to print something out in Python. And you should be able to do the basic like if statements. I could ask you to write a very simple if statement or a very simple like if else block, and you should be able to do that yourself. And so remember that in Python, we would use just the reserved word if. Whatever you are checking, to see if it's true, it has a colon at the end of it. And then we would tab over all of the lines of code that we wanted to be part of that if block. I'm not going to be super picky about syntax. Like if you forget to put the colon, at the end, or if you forget to put like a parenthesis in a print statement or quotation marks around the text, like, little kind of syntax things like that, that's not going to be a big deal. That isn't really what we're looking for here. What's important is, big picture ideas. Do you know how to set it up? Do you know, the reserved words that you need to use to accomplish a task, like if, else, print, and input, commands like that. If there is some little like syntax issue or whatever, that's not going to be like a major thing. And I won't be super picky about that, because I know that, when you write code in real life, you're doing it in an environment that would tell you if you forgot, a colon or a parenthesis or something like that. So it is more difficult to have to write code in a text box. I know that. I'm aware of that. We won't, I'm not going to be grading it expecting perfection. So maybe that'll put your mind at ease a little bit as far as like the standards go, but you should be able to, big picture idea, write Python statements, okay? And there will be one question, the big pop-up question, where you will be asked to write a program. And it will look very similar to program 1, what you had to do for program 1. So what that means is no conditionals. It won't have any if, else, if, if else branches. And it won't have, I forgot what I was about to say. But it'll be similar to exam 1, so to program 1. So you can expect like some simple math. You could expect maybe like some print statements. You could expect to have to get some input from the user, but not like any conditional branches or anything more advanced like that. Okay. So comments. So what I'm going to do, I have Replit pulled up. And I'm basically just going to go through, I'm just going to open up Replit and I'm just going to write some code. That's kind of what this video is going to be about. So there are 2 ways that we can write comments in Python. So I'm just going to create a new Python file. And this is just going to be exam 1 review. A comment, if you will remember, is ignored by the computer completely. A comment is for the programmer. It's for the human that's reading and writing the code, and you use them to try to make your code more readable. There are a couple of different ways you can make a comment in Python. I can use this hashtag. Let me enlarge my text here. So I can say like, this is a single line comment. And this isn't going to do anything at all. Like if I hit run, even though my code compiles and it works, it's not going to print anything out over here because I didn't ask the computer to do anything. The only line of code I have is a comment, and comments are ignored by the computer. Also in Python, we can make something that's called a dot string. And so I can say like, this is a multi-line comment. So I can have these 3 apostrophes. So like it's the single quotation mark that's on like right next to the enter key in your keyboard. You type 3 of them at a time. You might have noticed that when I typed in the 3, the Replit automatically closed it for me. So like the 3 apostrophes opened it, and then it's 3 to close it. And everything that's in between it is a comment. So like, still a comment, more comments, comments forever. So you can kind of notice that like all of this is the same color. The text is all the same color. That is a visual clue to us that this is all the same like thing, that this is all a comment, okay? And so this one would only allow me to be one single line. If I come down here and start typing, I'm no longer in the comment, right? Like it's changed to a new color. The computer expects this to be some sort of command. It thinks that it should be able to run it. As opposed to if I use my doc string, if I have my 3 apostrophes, then that opened up a comment. I can type as much as I want to in between there. And then I have 3 more to close it. So if I come down here, now I'm no longer in the comment anymore, right? So there's a couple different ways we can do that. That won't necessarily be a big thing on your test. But if you haven't seen that ability to make like a block comment before, that could be helpful for you in making your heading for program 3. And I would also like to note, if you didn't notice on like the announcement, or I will just reiterate, there is no program 4. Dr. Johnson and I have decided to scrap that. So on the week where it says you have Python quiz 4 and Python program 4, you will only take the quiz and that's it. Determining whether a variable is valid or invalid means, does it follow our rules for a valid variable name? So let's take a look at some valid variable names. This is not a valid variable name, and we could set it equal to wrong. So you might notice that like there are some angry red lines, and I've got some reserved words in here. So our rules for a valid variable name, let's say this, we'll just type them in do it in a comment, right? Let's do this. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that one. I didn't mean to go down there. Oh, you don't have to tab over. Like I'm just doing that because I personally like it, but I just realized that if I do it every time, you might think you have to. Okay, so here are some of the rules. Okay, we'll say variable naming rules. Have to be all one word. You can't have spaces in your variable name. Otherwise, how would the computer know if this is supposed to be part of your variable name or if it is supposed to be the next command? Like how would the computer know? It can't read your mind. It doesn't know what you're trying to do. So we need a variable to just be like one entity. So it needs to all be one word. Another thing is that it can't be a reserved word. So you might notice that like this changed colors. That's because these words have special meaning in Python, right? I'm not allowed to name a variable not, because the word not is a command in Python. It tells the computer, I want you to negate whatever, value comes after this. So I can't use this word as a name. How would the computer be able to differentiate if I was trying to use my variable or if I was trying to use the command? So we can't use a reserved word to name our variables. There are certain characters that are not allowed. So we'll say no funky characters, and I'll show you an example of that. So like just the word name itself is fine. Like I could name a valuable name. Like I could name a variable name. That would be fine. But I could not name something name with like an asterisk or with a an at sign or with a dollar sign or a bunch of question marks or something like that. So no funky characters. We can be numbers, we can be letters, we can be an underscore. That's pretty much it. We can't be like an exclamation mark or anything like that. So no funky characters. And if you'll notice, every time I did one of those incorrect things and I got that red line after it, it was saying that, like it doesn't know what to do with this because this is not like, you can't make this into a variable. So it doesn't really know what you're supposed to do. And then the final one is it has to start with a letter, and I think it can start with an underscore as well. So let's see. Yeah, that's fine. Has to start with a letter or an underscore. So even though numbers are allowed, like I can name this num12, like whatever, you can have numbers in your variable names. I could not have it start with one. If it started with a number, then I get an error. So those are our 4 rules for a valid variable name. And remember, I've been saying variable this whole time. Remember what a variable is. It is just some place in the computer where you have reserved memory. You can refer to it by name. So you're telling the computer, every time I reference name, I want you to go find this place in memory and give me the value that is stored there. So we would, if I wrote, name, if I said like print name, then the computer knows that it needs to go to this memory location and give me the value that is stored there. So it would print out wrong. So that's what a variable is. A variable is some place in memory that you have reserved, you gave it a name, and you can refer to it by name to get the value that's there. Okay. Oh, I had this in a left in a second thing. All right, print statements. We just saw some print statements. Let's take a look at this again. Let's say, okay, I'm going to say, we're going to get my name. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to say, we're going to get user input. That's something that you're going to need to be able to do for the test. So let's take a look at this. This is an example of getting user input. So if you remember, the command to get user input is input. We have parentheses after it. And then whatever you type inside of the parentheses is what will get printed to the screen. So I need to print my directions to the user. What do I want them to do? So I could say, enter your name. And this is what is going to be displayed on the screen. The screen will say, enter your name. And then the computer will sit and wait because it is waiting for the user to type some input. It's waiting to read in the user response. When it does that, it's going to this equal sign is, the assignment operator. We talked about that a little bit ago. That assignment operator says, take the value on the right, store it in the location on the left. So we're going to say, take the user input that we read in, store it inside of name. So all this is going to do is just print the name back out to us, right? So let's see an example of that. My name is Micah. It prints out Micah. Fantastic. Maybe we want our print statement to be a little more involved than that. Maybe we want it to say something to the user. So I'm going to make it say, hello, whatever name they entered. And then I'm going to say, what a pretty name. Okay. In the previous videos, I showed you an example of using the plus sign to kind of concatenate together multiple things. If you wanted to print them all out together, that's totally valid. It works fine. You can absolutely do that. That really only works with strings. So like here, we're working with names, so that would have been fine. But then if you wanted to be working with numbers, we would have to go through and like cast it as a string every time we wanted to print it, which is just a little bit cumbersome. So we can just use this like comma to separate things that we want it to print out. So like if I said, enter a name, Micah, hello, Micah, what a pretty name. And that, works fine too. So multiple different ways that we could have a print statement that is going to print out more than one thing at a time, where we can combine some text that we want it to print out like exactly the way the text looks. We could put it in quotation marks. And also we could combine it with values that are stored inside of variables, right? If I had accidentally put name inside of quotes, then I would be telling the computer, I want you to literally print the word name. So it would not go get the value that was stored inside of the variable. It would be treating this as the word name. So that's just a little bit on like print statements and assignment statements and how you can get input. So the command to get input from a user is input. And then one thing that's really important, and it kind of ties into this line as well, is the way that your data gets stored when it gets read in from the user. So this was a really big part of program 1. And it'll definitely be something that you will need to know for the test, right? And the big thing is and I'll just write this out here, when you use the input command to get data from the user, it is automatically stored as a string. Okay, it's automatically going to go on the computer as a string. So let's talk for just a second about what that means. There are these 3 data types that we have listed here on the exam 1 topic list. A data type says, what is the kind of information that you are storing in this variable? So int is short for integer. That's just like it is in math. An integer is a whole number, any whole number, positive or negative. A float is a number with a decimal. So you're allowed to have a decimal with a float, not allowed to have a decimal with an int. A string is just a series of characters. It could be numbers, letters, words, sentences, but really strings are not intended for you to do math with them. So even though you can put numbers in strings, you wouldn't really have the ability to do mathematical operations on those numbers. So what do I mean by that? If I said, my phone number, if I told you my phone number, that data would be a number, but it's not the kind of data that you would do math with, right? You wouldn't take my phone number and like multiply it by 2. That wouldn't make any sense. Or if I gave you like my mailing address, that would have numbers in it, but you wouldn't be doing math with that information. Like you don't add something to somebody's zip code. It's just data. It's textual data that happens to have numbers in it, as opposed to int and float, which is numerical data, and we have the ability to do mathematical operations on them. So when I use this input command, whatever the user enters in is automatically going in as a string. So I'm not going to have the ability to do math with what the user enters in unless I specifically tell the computer, I want you to store this data as a numerical value. So let's take a look at that. So here's an example where we read it in as a string. We just used input. It read my name as just like a word. That's totally fine. A name is a word. That makes sense. Now we're going to have some little code here where we ask the user to enter a number. So we'll say enter a number. And that's fine. Like I can read in a number and I can put it in a string and that would be fine. So I could say like, we can name this variable something different. And we could say like, we could print out number, is a great number, whatever. You just like print it out. That's fine. Enter your name, Micah, enter a number 6. 6 is a great number, fantastic. But now if I asked the computer to do some mathematical operation with this value, so maybe I'm going to ask the computer to double it, right? So maybe I'm going to say something like number times 2 is double your number. And I run this and I can say my name is Micah and I enter the number 6, and that is not what we intended it to do. Right? That's like completely wrong. We can't do that. If I asked it to say like +2, oh, actually that's just going to concatenate it. Let's ask it to divide. Let's tell it that we want it to take the number and divide it by 2. So I'm going to say 6 and I get an error, right? So it says it does not know how to divide a string and an int. That's what this error is saying. It says this line of code is a mistake. You have a problem here. The computer does not know how to do a mathematical operation between a word and a number. So how do we fix that? How do we solve that? Here, and we had to do this in program 1, if you remember. Here, we have to take the user input and cast it as an integer. I need to tell the computer, because see, what it's reading in is the string. What it thinks is the string is the number 6. Like it read in 6 as a string because that is the default way to read in data using the input command. So I need to tell the computer, enter a number, read in the user input, store whatever they type in as a numerical value. Now the computer can say 6 divided by 2 because it knows how to do mathematical operations, on 2 number values. Like it knows how to do that. So my name is Micah. I enter 6. Oh, well, 3.0 is no longer double our number, is it? Since we divided it by 2 instead of multiplying it by 2. So we'll update our text and we'll say 3 is half your number. Okay. So now we have talked about valid variable names. We've talked about print statements. We've gone through the 3 data types. We've talked about input and how you might need to cast input. That's very important. You should definitely write that down, study it, try to remember that when you're taking your exam. And then this was the thing we were just talking about, right? When you read an input, it is automatically a string. You might need to convert it to a numerical data type if you want the ability to do a mathematical operation. A combined assignment statement says, I want you to do this mathematical operation and also store the result back into the variable that you used to do the math. Let's see an example of that. So what if we said, let's just change the value inside of the actual variable. So if we said number times, combined assignment statements, you write them right next to each other. So we could say number times equals 2, and then we could say print number is your number double. And then this would go back to is your original number. Okay. So this says take whatever value was inside of the variable number, multiply it by 2, store the result back in the variable. So if we put I'm going to put a 4 inside of number. Here, it's going to take that 4 and multiply it by 2. So number will equal 8 whenever I come down to the next one. So we have 8 is your number doubled. If I take a number, if I take double the number and I divide it by 2, well, that's going to go right back to the way it was originally. So that would give me back out the original number. All right. Remember that the proper order of operations in computer science is PEMDAS, where multiplication, modulus, and division all have equal precedence. We solve them left to right, whichever comes first. And addition and subtraction have equal precedence. You solve them left to right, whichever comes first. These mathematical operators, this one is add, subtract, divide. This is integer division. Integer division is where you take a whole number, you divide it by a whole number. The computer will only give you the whole number result. It won't even look at, it doesn't round or anything. It doesn't even calculate the decimal. It will just chop the decimal off. It won't even be part of it. This is multiplication. This is modulus. If you remember, modulus divides and returns the remainder. We don't care about the quotient at all. It does not matter what the result of the division problem was. We don't use that at all. We only want the remainder. And then this one is an exponent. So it says some number raised to the power of the second number. Remember that a Boolean value is true or false. In Python, those words are capitalized. And then these operators, and, or, and not. These operators are just spelled out in Python. Some other programming languages, you use special characters to represent them. You literally just type out the word in Python. I saw a few people use and or in Python program 2. So for example, if you did the craps game, you might have said if the number was 7 or if the number equaled 11, either one, you won or whatever, you print out winner. Fantastic use of a logical operator. That was great. And then a conditional operator. This guy says two things are equal. So let's check that out. Let's do some examples where we check for equal. This one is equal. Less than and greater than works exactly the same way as it does in math. So I'm not going to spend too much time on those because I feel like, you've probably seen that before. This exclamation mark means not. So this symbol means not equals. And if you'll notice, like, why do we have to use double equal signs to represent equality? It's because one equal sign all by itself already means assignment. We are already using the equal sign to do something else. We're saying take a value, store it in the variable. So if I want to use the equal sign as a regular equal sign, I need to have a way to differentiate it. So we double them up. So let's take a look at that. So let's say, let's take a look at this name up here. So I want to know if the person that I am talking to is Micah. So here I have the reserved word if. I say take the value that is stored inside of the variable name. If it is equal to, if it is an exact match, capitalization matters, all of it. If it is an exact match with Micah, then I know it's me, right? So what am I going to do? If statements in Python, everything that I want to be part of the if statement, I'll tab over. So what am I going to say if the user is me? Then I will say, I have known you all my life, right? Because if their name is Micah, then it's me. Otherwise, else, if the user prints in, if they input any other name, then I am going to say, nice to meet you, because there'll be somebody new. Those are the only two options. You're either me or you're brand new, one of the two. Of course, that's very silly, but it is an example of using the equality operator. Is this value equal to whatever is stored inside of this variable? If it is, we will do this thing. Else, if that if statement is not true, we will do this other thing. So it says, hello, Micah, what a pretty name. I have known you all my life. Enter a number. Let's run this again and let's enter a different name. I'm going to enter my son's name. It says, hello, Connor, what a pretty name. Nice to meet you, right? Because Connor did not equal Micah. This if statement was false. We fell down to the else branch. We could have, let's see an example of using one of those logical operators. So let's see an example of using like an and, an or a not. It's not possible for a name to equal two different exact strings. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like it can't be two different strings at the exact same time. That doesn't make any sense. So and would not really make, it would not be logical as a logical operator here. Ha 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 ha. It really wouldn't make sense for me to use the and operator here. So instead I could say or. So maybe I want to have some special thing that happens for either one of these names. So like if your name is Micah, or if your name is Billy, that's my husband, then if you are one of the two of us, then that means you need to make dinner. So if you're one of the adults around this house, you need to go make dinner. And otherwise, anybody else, you need to wait patiently. So those are your options. You can either be Micah or Billy, in which case you need to go make dinner, or you can be a guest and you need to just sit and wait. So let's take a look at that option. Let's say that I am Billy. hello, Billy, what a pretty name. You need to make dinner. Let's say that I am Connor. You need to wait patiently, right? So either one, like if I had entered Micah or Billy, either one, then this conditional would have been true. We would run into this first if branch. Any other name, this if statement is false, we would come down here, you need to wait. All right. And then I've already shown examples of if and elif. So I think the only other thing I should maybe do a little example of is some mathematical operators, and then we will wrap up this video. So let's say, let's talk about mod. Mod is something that students are usually not as familiar with because that isn't, an operation that you've really ever done before. So let's say, let's just have a print statement. I'm just going to do that like up here at the very beginning. So we'll just say this is an example of the mod operator. Remember that mod is going to divide and return the remainder. So you possibly used mod for program 1 to determine the leftover, like the number of leftover slices of pizza in program 1. So let's say I could maybe ask the computer, like I could ask the user to enter a number. So let's say num1. I could say enter a number. I want the ability to do a little math with it. So I'm going to cast this as an int, get it as a numerical value. And then I'm going to say if this number is evenly divisible by 2. What does it mean if you divide a number by 2 and there's no remainder? That would mean it is an even number. What would it mean if that was not the case? If I divided it by 2 and there was not a 0 remainder, then it would have been an odd number. So let's take a look at this code, and then I think we're done for this video. So we know what input is going to do. It's going to print this text out to the screen, read in whatever the user types. I want the ability to do math with it, so I should tell the computer to make it a number. I say take whatever number they entered, divide it by 2. I do not care what the result of the division problem was. I only want to know what's the leftover part. So like if I said, what is 8 mod 2? Well, 8 divided by 2 is 4. What's the remainder? No remainder. Divided evenly, right? If you can evenly divide a number by 2, then it was an even number. Else, if it has a remainder of 1, it was an odd number. So let's enter the number 5. It tells us that is an odd number. I'm not going to go through the rest of it. Let's enter the number 10. It tells us that's an even number. I'm not going to go through the rest of it. So hopefully you feel pretty good after watching this video. We've talked about all of the different things that I think you would maybe need to know for the exam. I am going to have an online office hour tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning, and I'll post that link in the announcement. And then I'll also have in-person office hours on Wednesday. I have them from 10 to 11 and from 1 to, I don't have them in the afternoon on Wednesday actually because I have a meeting from 1 to 3. But you could come in, like if you email me and schedule an appointment, I could meet with you either before or after that meeting. Or you could come into my morning office hours. Good luck to everybody as you take the test. Definitely study, definitely go back and double check your number-based conversions and review the history of computing, the people on that topic list especially, and then let me know if you have any questions. I will see you all next week when you go watch the videos for loops. And good luck on your test. Thank you.